Part One, Chapter 4 of The Job. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Job by Sinclair Lewis. Part One, The City. Chapter 4. Sanford Hunt telephoned to Una that he and Mr. Julius Edward Schwirtz, whom he called Eddie, had done their best to find an opening for her in the office of the Lowry Paint Company, but that there was no chance. The commercial college gave her the names of several possible employers, but they all wanted approximate perfection at approximately nothing a week. After 10 days of panic-stricken waiting at the employment office of a typewriter company, and answering want advertisements, the typewriter people sent her to the office of the Motor and Gas Gazette, a weekly magazine for the trade. In this atmosphere of the literature of lubricating oil and drop forgings and body enamels, as an $8 a week copyist, Una first beheld the drama and romance of the office world. There is plenty of romance in business. Fine, large, meaningless general terms like romance and business can always be related. They take the place of thinking, and are highly useful to optimists and lecturers. But in the world of business there is a bewildered new muse of romance, who is clad not in silvery tissue of dreams, but in a neat blue suit that won't grow too shiny under the sleeves. Adventure now, with Una, in the world of business, of offices and jobs and tired, ordinary people who know such reality of romance as your masquerading earl, your shoddy Broadway actress, or your rosily amorous dairymaid could never imagine. The youths of poetry and of the modern motor car fiction make a long diversion of love, while the sleazy-coated office man, who surprises a look of humanness in the weary eyes of the office woman, knows that he must compress all the wonder of madness into 5 minutes, because the chief is prowling about, glancing meaningly at the little signs that declare, "Your time is your employer's money. Don't steal it." A world is this whose noblest vista is composed of desks and typewriters, filing cases and insurance calendars, telephones, and the bald heads of men who believe dreams to be idiotic. Here no galleon breasts the skyline, no explorer in evening clothes makes love to an heiress. Here ride no rollicking cowboys, nor heroes of the great European war. It is a world whose crises you cannot comprehend unless you have learned that the difference between a 2A pencil and a 2B pencil is at least equal to the contrast between London and Tibet, unless you understand why a normally self-controlled young woman may have a week of tragic discomfort because she is using a billing machine instead of her ordinary correspondence typewriter. The shifting of the water cooler from the front office to the packing room may be an epical event to a copyist who apparently has no human existence beyond bending over a clacking typewriter, who seems to have no home, no family, no loves, in whom all pride and wonder of life and all transforming drama seem to be satisfied by the possession of a new V-necked blouse. The moving of the water cooler may mean that she must now pass the sentinel office manager, that therefore she no longer dares break the incredible monotony by expeditions to get glasses of water. As a consequence, she gives up the office and marries unhappily. A vast, competent, largely useless cosmos of offices. It spends much energy in causing advertisements of beer and chewing gum and union suits and pot cleansers to spread over the whole landscape. It marches out ponderous battalions to sell a brass pin. It evokes shoes that are uncomfortable, hideous, and perishable, and touchingly hopes that all women will aid the cause of good business by wearing them. It turns noble valleys into fields for pickles. It compels men whom it has never seen to toil in distant factories and produce useless wares, which are never actually brought into the office, but which it nevertheless sells to the heathen in the Solomon Islands in exchange for commodities whose very names it does not know. And in order to perform this miracle of transmutation, it keeps stenographers so busy that they change from dewy girls into tight-lipped spinsters before they discover life. The reason for it all, nobody who is actually engaged in it can tell you, except the bosses, who believe that these sacred rites of composing dull letters and solemnly filing them away are observed in order that they may buy the large automobiles in which they do not have time to take the air. Efficiency of production they have learned. Efficiency of life they still consider an effeminate hobby. An unreasonable world, sacrificing bird song and tranquil dusk and high golden noons to selling junk, yet it rules us. And life lives there. The office is filled with thrills of love and distrust and ambition. Each alley between desks quivers with secret romance as ceaselessly as a battle trench or a lane in Normandy. Una's first view of the Motor and Gas Gazette was of an overwhelming mass of desks and files and books, and a confusing, spying crowd of strange people, among whom the only safe, familiar persons were Miss Moynihan, the good-natured, solid block of girl whom she had known at the commercial college, and Mr. S. Herbert Ross, the advertising manager who had hired her. Mr. Ross was a poet of business, a squat, nervous little man, whose hair was cut in a Dutch bang, straight across his forehead, and who always wore a black bow tie and semi-clerical black clothes. He had eyed Una amusedly, asked her what was her reaction to green and crimson posters, and given her a little book by himself, "R.U.A. Time Clock, Mr. Man," which, in large and tremendously black type, related two stories about the youth of Carnegie, and strongly advocated industry, correspondence schools, and expensive advertising. When Una entered the office as a copyist, Mr. S. Herbert Ross turned her over to the office manager, and thereafter ignored her. But whenever she saw him in pompous conference with editors and advertisers, she felt proudly that she knew him. The commercial college had trained her to work with a number of people, as she was now to do in the office, but in the seriousness and savage continuity of its toil, the office was very different. There was no let-up. She couldn't shirk for a day or two, as she had done at the commercial college. It was not so much that she was afraid of losing her job, as that she came to see herself as part of a chain. The others, beyond, were waiting for her, she mustn't hold them up. That was her first impression of the office system, that and the insignificance of herself in the presence of the office hierarchy, manager above manager, and the mysterious owner beyond all. She was alone. Once she transgressed, they would crush her. They had no personal interest in her, none of them, except her classmate, Miss Moynihan, who smiled at her and went out to lunch with her. They two did not dare to sit over parcels of lunch with the curious other girls. Before 15-cent lunches of baked apples, greasy Napoleons, and cups of coffee at a cheap restaurant, Miss Moynihan and she talked about the office manager, the editors, the strain of copying all day, and they united in lyric hatred of the lieutenant of the girls, a satiric young woman who was a wonderful hater. Una had regarded Miss Moynihan as thick and stupid, but not when she had thought of falling in love with Charlie Martindale at a dance at Panama, not in her most fervid hours of comforting her mother, had she been so closely in sympathy with any human being as she was with Miss Moynihan when they went over and over the problems of office politics, office favorites, office rules, office customs. The customs were simple. Certain hours for arrival, for lunch, for leaving. Women's retiring room embarrassedly discovered to be on the right behind the big safe. Water cooler in the center of the stenographer's room. But the office prejudices, the taboos, could not be guessed. They offered you every possible chance of queering yourself. Miss Moynihan, on her very first day, discovered, perspiringly, that you must never mention the Gazette's rival, the Internal Combustion News. The Gazette's attitude was that the news did not exist, except when the Gazette wanted the plate of an advertisement which the news was to forward. You mustn't chew gum in the office. You were to ask favors of the lieutenant, not of the office manager, and you mustn't be friendly with Mr. Bush of the circulation department, nor with Miss Caldwell, the filing clerk. Why they were taboo, Una never knew. It was an office convention. They seemed pleasant and proper people enough. She was initiated into the science of office supplies. In the commercial college the authorities had provided stenographers' notebooks and pencils, and the representatives of typewriter companies had given lectures on cleaning and oiling typewriters, putting in new ribbons, adjusting tension wheels. But Una had not realized how many tools she had to know. Desks, filing cabinets, mimeographs, adding machines, card indexes, desk calendars, telephone extensions, adjustable desk lights. Wire correspondence baskets, erasers, carbon paper, type brushes, dust rags, waste baskets. Pencils, hard and soft, black and blue and red. Pens, pen points, backing sheets, notebooks, paper clips. Mucilage, paste, stationery, the half-dozen sorts of envelopes and letterheads. Tools were these, as important in her trade as the masthead and black flag, the cutlasses and crimson sashes, the gold doubloons and damsels fair of pirate fiction, or the cheese and cream, old horses and slumberous lanes of rustic comedy. As important, and perhaps to be deemed as romantic some day. Witness the rhapsodic advertisements of filing cabinets that are built like battleships, of carbon paper that is magic inked and satin smooth. Not as priest or soldier or judge does youth seek honor today, but as a man of offices. The business subaltern, charming and gallant as the jungle gallopers of Kipling, drills files, not of troops, but of correspondence. The artist plays the keys, not of pianos, but of typewriters. Desks, not decks. Courts of office buildings, not of palaces. These are the stuff of our latter-day drama. Not through wolf-haunted forests nor purple canyons, but through tiled hallways and elevators, move our heroes of today. And our heroine is important not because she is an Amazon or a Ramona, but because she is representative of some millions of women in business, and because, in a vague but undiscouraged way, she keeps on inquiring what women in business can do to make human their existence of loveless routine. Una spent much of her time in copying over and over, 100 times, 200 times, form letters soliciting advertising, letters too personal in appearance to be multigraphed. She had lists of manufacturers of motor car accessories, of makers of lubricating oils, of distributors of ball bearings and speedometers and springs and carburetors and compositions for waterproofing automobile tops. Sometimes she was requisitioned by the editorial department to copy in form legible for the printer the rough items sent in by outsiders for publication in the Gazette. Una, like most people of Panama, had believed that there was something artistic about the office of any publication. One would see editors, wonderful men like grand dukes, prone to lunch with the president. But there was nothing artistic about the editorial office of the Gazette. Several young men in shirt sleeves and green celluloid eye shades, very slangy and pipe smelly, and an older man with unpressed trousers and ragged mustache. Nor was there anything literary in the things that Una copied for the editorial department, just painfully handwritten accounts of the meeting of the Southeastern Iowa Auto Dealers Association, or boasts about the increased sales of Road Eater tires, a page originally smartly typed, but cut and marked up by the editors. Lists and letters and items, over and over, sitting at her typewriter till her shoulder blades ached and she had to shut her eyes to the blur of the keys, the racket of office noises all day, the 3 o'clock hour when she felt that she simply could not endure the mill till 5 o'clock. No interest in anything she wrote. Then the blessed hour of release, the stretching of cramped legs and the blind creeping to the subway, the crush in the train, and home to comfort the mother who had been lonely all day. Such was Una's routine in these early months of 1906. After the novelty of the first week it was all rigidly the same, except that distinct personalities began to emerge from the mass. Especially the personality of Walter Babson. Out of the mist of strange faces, blurred hordes of people who swaggered up the office aisle so knowingly, and grinned at her when she asked questions, individualities began to take form. Miss Moynihan, the Jewish stenographer with the laughing lips and hot eyes, the 4 superior older girls in a corner, the still more superior girl lieutenant, and the office manager, who was the least superior of all, the telephone girl, the office boys, Mr. S. Herbert Ross and his assistant, the managing editor, a motor magnate whose connection was mysterious, the owner, a courteous, silent, glancing man who was reported to be hard and stingy. Other people still remained unidentifiable to her, but the office appeared smaller and less formidable in a month. Out of each 9 square feet of floor space in the office a novel might have been made. The tale of the managing editor's neurotic wife. The tragedy of Chubby Hubbard, the stupid young editor who had been a college football star, then an automobile racer, then a failure. And indeed there was a whole novel, a story told and retold in the girls' gossip about each of the men before whom they were so demure. But it was Walter Babson whom the girls most discussed and in whom Una found the most interest. On her first day in the office she had been startled by an astounding young man who had come flying past her desk, with his coat off, his figured waistcoat half open, his red 4-in-hand tie askew under a rolling, soft collar. He had dashed up to the office manager and demanded, Say, Nat, got that Cocomobile description copied for me yet? Hey? God, you're slow. Got a cigarette?" He went off, puffing out cigarette smoke, shaking his head and audibly muttering, "Slow bunch, werry." He seemed to be of Una's own age, or perhaps a year older, a slender young man with horn-rimmed eyeglasses, curly black hair, and a trickle of black mustache. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbow, and Una had a secret, shamed, shivering thrill in the contrast of the dead white skin of his thin forearms with the long, thick, soft black hairs matted over them. They seemed at once feminine and acidly male. "Crazy idiot," she observed, apparently describing herself and the nervous young man together, but she knew that she wanted to see him again. She discovered that he was prone to such violent appearances, that his name was Walter Babson, that he was one of the 3 desk editors under the managing editor, that the stenographers and office boys alternately disapproved of him because he went on sprees and borrowed money from anybody in sight, and adored him because he was democratically frank with them. He was at once a hero, clown, prodigal son, and preacher of honesty. It was variously said that he was a socialist, an anarchist, and a believer in an American monarchy, which he was reported as declaring would "give some color to this flat-faced province of a country." It was related that he had been fresh, even to the owner, and had escaped discharge only by being the quickest worker in the office, the best handyman at turning motor statistics into lively news stories. Una saw that he liked to stand about, bawling to the quizzical S. Herbert Ross that "this is a hell of a shop to work in, rotten pay and no esprit de corps. I'd quit and freelance if I could break in with fiction, but a rotten bunch of log rollers have got the inside track with all the magazines and book publishers." "Ever try to write any fiction?" Una once heard S. Herbert retort. "No, but Lord, any fool could write better stuff than they publish. It's all a freeze-out game. Editors just accept stuff by their friends." In 1 week Una heard Walter Babson make approximately the same assertions to 3 different men, and to whoever in the open office might care to listen and profit thereby. Then, apparently, he ceased to hear the call of literature, and he snorted at S. Herbert Ross's stodgy assistant that he was a wage slave, and a fool not to form a clerks' union. In a week or 2 he was literary again. He dashed down to the office manager, poked a sheet of copy paper at him, and yelped, "Say, Nat, read that and tell me just what you think of it. I'm going to put some literary flavor into the gas bag, even if it does explode it. Look, see? I've taken a boost for the Kells carburetor rotten lying boost it is, too and turned it into this running verse. Read it like prose, pleasant and easy to digest, especially beneficial to children and S. Herbert Souse, Sherbert Souse, I mean." He rapidly read an amazing lyric beginning, "Motorists, you hadn't better monkey with the carburetor. All the racers, all the swells, have equipped their cars with Kells. We are privileged to announce what will give the trade a jounce, that the floats have been improved like all motorists would have loved." He broke off and shouted, "Punk last line, but I'll fix it up. Say, that'll get 'em all going, eh? Say, I bet the Kells people use it in billboard ads all over the country, and maybe sign my name. Ads, why, say, it takes a literary guy to write ads, not a fat-headed commercialist like S. Charlie Hoss." 2 days later Una heard Babson come out and lament that the managing editor didn't like his masterpiece, and was going to use the Kells Carburetor Company's original write-up. "That's what you get when you try to give the gas bag some literary flavor. Don't appreciate it." She would rather have despised him, except that he stopped by the office boys' bench to pull their hair and tell them to read English dictionaries. and when Miss Moynihan looked dejected, Babson demanded of her, "What's trouble, girlie? Anybody I can lick for you? Glad to fire the owner, or anything. Haven't met you yet, but my name is Roosevelt, and I'm the new janitor," with 100 other chuckling idiocies, till Miss Moynihan was happy again. Una warmed to his friendliness, like that of a tail-wagging little yellow pup. And always she craved the touch of his dark, blunt, nervous hands. Whenever he lighted a cigarette, she was startled by his masculine way of putting out the match and jerking it away from him in one abrupt motion. She had never studied male mannerisms before. To Miss Golden of Panama, men had always been "the boys." All this time Walter Babson had never spoken to her. End of chapter 4.